Welcome to Record Rangers, the Daily Records weekly podcast on everything concerning the blue side of Glasgow, brought to you by NordVPN. My name is Angus Hyde and today I'm joined by Record Sports' Andy Newport. How's things, mate?
I'm very well, Angus. How are you, pal?
Loving life, mate, loving life. Today we bring you a special episode regarding Rangers' annual shareholders meeting that had the likes of Andrew Kavanagh in the hot seat. Andy, first up, what was the energy like at the meeting considering the last 12 months at Ibrox?
You can understand that there's a bit of frustration amongst the shareholders. I think it's about 550 people at the meeting today. You do get the usual sort of questions that bounce around, things like people wanting their pies and their shareholdings addressed. But the main takeaway was people just the fact that things haven't gone well this season. They didn't go well last season, and the fear is that this season is starting in a similar sort of vein to the way things went last year and how quickly that sort of spiralled out of control. So, I think the guys, Andrew Kavanagh, Parag Marathi, Jim Gillespie, they held their hands up. They admitted that things hadn't been done well enough. The mistakes had been made. And, they vowed they were doing their best to make sure that it didn't happen again. But there's also that appreciation that I think that the phrase used by Andrew Kavanagh, that talk is cheap, words are cheap. It's easy to say these things. It's harder to put it into practice, and until they put a winning Rangers team out on the pitch, they're going to face the criticism that they got today. They accept it. They're not, as I say, they're not shying away from it. But I think they were just keen, and I do think they came across well. I always think that Andrew Kavanagh and Marathi are very, they're effective communicators. They were at pains to make out that they're doing everything they can to sort the issues here and make sure that they get things right.
Yeah, of course, and looking at football just now, we're looking at the kind of hysteria that's going on in the likes of Newcastle and stuff like that with takeovers. They were saying Newcastle 2.0, this was Rangers almost 2.0 with how dramatic things have been, but the results haven't come early on, and with Rangers, the results are everything that talks.
No, I mean, I think when they came in, there's obviously been a previous board in place that were making decisions. That goes as far as the appointment of Russell Martin. So when the new board came in, I think the recruitment of that process they're already far down the road. So they kind of had to just go with it because of the length of time that it had taken to get the takeover deal done. Russell Martin effectively just got the nod from the new board. Same goes with sort of Kevin Thirlwell, who was the sporting director at that time. So they kind of just had to go with the pieces that they found already in place. Would they have made the same decisions with hindsight? Certainly not. But they're learning on the job to effect. They admitted that. They've come into, obviously Parag Marathi's got involvement with Leeds United, so he has football experience. He's got huge sporting experience in America with the NFL with the 49ers. But Rangers, Glasgow, Scottish football, they're unique places, and they've had to sort of take a bit of time to get their head around it. They've made mistakes, as I say. They're hoping now, with the pieces they've put in place, the results haven't quite clicked yet, but once the team gels, once the new signings click in, there's obviously still, Andrew Kavanagh said today, he's still hoping to get another sort of 4 or 5 signings in the door before the end of the window. We believe one of them's, very close. I think the message was, don't judge us now, wait till the end of the season. That's easy to say. Fans are angry, understandably, but I think in the day, 2 games into seasons isn't the time to be sort of leaping to conclusions and making knee-jerk reactions.
Well, you were talking about recruitment. News is coming in. There's been an improved bid submitted for the PSV attacker Cabe Droyek.
Yeah, that's good. You've practiced that, yeah.
I was sitting practicing that in the car. As obviously McInnes is looking to boost some creativity going forward. We've not quite seen that so far. Not the best opening couple of advertisements for the way that I think McInnes wants to play this Rangers team. First of all, what was their kind of views on last year's recruitment? You touched on that, and what are they saying looking forward, which is the one Rangers fans will want to know?
Well, I think they obviously signed a lot of guys that just weren't equipped enough, I think, for the psychological aspect of Glasgow. I think that was addressed today, that they didn't feel they had the leadership group, and you can see that because they've basically dismantled last season's leadership group. James Tavernier obviously left the club, Jack Burton was allowed to leave, John Souttar's on his way out, looks like Nico Raskin could be leaving as well if they can get an offer that's suitable for them. So they established that the guys who came in maybe weren't made of the right stuff in terms of being able to shoulder the weight of burden, the weight of expectation that rests on you as a Rangers player. So, yeah, that's, that was what they realised from last year. They've been trying to address that. Again, you've got guys still trying to adapt, trying to find their feet in Glasgow. But they have signed guys that have got captaincy experience, guys that have played for big clubs, guys that know. They also made a point that they also wanted to get guys that had SPFL experience or Scottish that knew what it was meant to play in the club. Obviously, you're looking at Lawrence Shanklin coming as new captain, boyhood fan. It's been his life's dream to get to this point. You can bet his bottom dollar that he'll be determined to make a success of it. Yeah, he's not had the best of start, but no one has. Cammy Devlin comes in. Again, with that natural tenacity that he brings, but again, who's been every ground in the league, who'll know exactly what it means to go to Pittodrie on a rainy Wednesday night, to go to Perth, to go to St Mirren. So they think they've done that, but that's the sort of rebuilding the spine of the team and rebuilding the sort of leadership aspect of it. Now they need to add the flourishes. Listen, we've been saying this all summer. We've been talking about this all summer, that they needed to add quality, and that's what this team's missing right now. They've got the guys who can run, the guys who can battle. What they really need to get to the level that's going to allow them to compete with Celtic is the quality at the top end of the pitch. You saw what Celtic were able to produce at Rugby Park with their new signings, Duran, Casper Ho. Rangers really need guys at that level. I mean, you're talking about, Casper Ho coming in was at 10, 11 million pounds.
But then you look at the addition of Chirmiti for what was that, 8-9 million as well.
I mean, he was again, you saw signs of promise. Again, that just shows you what money buys you these days. 10 million quid 15 years ago would have bought you a nailed-on 35-goal a season striker. These days, it just buys you potential. So, Rangers, though, are going to have to try and push the boat out. Obviously, Droyek coming in looking like a £7 million signing on a 4-year deal, which, again, at 24 looks like a good bit of business. If he can get to the levels that he did in certain points of his PSV, we saw the goals he scored against Liverpool, against Napoli, but you speak to people in Holland, they say, again, it's consistency, and that's been the big thing about this Rangers team, is that there's guys who can play one-off great performances, but doing it week in, week out is the challenge. And again, this is what we're seeing right now with this Rangers team, is that still not quite able to produce. Not even within games, they have spells. They can't. It's the 90-minute week in, week out performances where this team falls down.
Yeah, of course. And looking at that, the number one person you can point to in terms of consistency or lack of is the number 9 for Rangers. But what are they saying looking forward? What's the kind of chat going forward for transfers for Rangers this season? Because there's still a lot to go.
Yeah, probably another. Andrew Cavan said another 4 to 5 coming in. So you've got to imagine that Droyek would be one of them. Obviously, some news last night from our colleague Scott McDermott, who I've forgotten the name of the player that he broke. If you give me 1 second, I'll see if I can dig it out.
No problem.
But yeah, so they are looking at another right back. They need another centre back probably. I would imagine, they need probably another left back. Talk of James Penrice coming in. Obviously, there's here we go, Scott. So Scott McDermott last night broke the story that it's Costa Nedeljkovic, which is probably worse pronunciation than your one of Droyek earlier on. He's the former Partizan Belgrade defender who signed for Aston Villa for about £9 million a couple of years ago, spent the last year at Leipzig. So yeah, that's the right back they're looking at. They want another, I would imagine they want another right winger to help challenge Daisuke Yokota came in last week. Listen, if Chirmiti's out long term, we're still waiting for the scans that he was getting today. Imagine another centre forward. So listen, there's plenty of work to be done, but I think what we should reassure the Rangers fans is that Andrew Kavanagh is aware of what's needed and insists they will get it. I mean, he and Jim Gillespie, the CEO, were at pains today to point out that as much as fans might want you to have every signing made for the first day of the window, for maybe they're in place for the first game of the season, it doesn't happen like that. You've had a World Cup this summer. That always tends to delay things because players are back to their clubs late. Whatever coaches are assessing what they would need for that season, it pushes their decisions on. So these things always tend to have a sort of knock-on effect, and Rangers, where they are in the food chain, have to wait. They have to wait their turn until they can get the players that they want. But I think patience is the watchword right now. Derek McInnes needs the fans to have patience in the stand when the team's trying to find its feet in a football sense. The fans also have to give the recruitment team patience. But that's not to say that you can give everyone at Ibrox,
slack
right now, because they're playing games. There's Rangers are already 5 points, 2 games into the season are 5 points adrift of Celtic, and as we've seen with Rangers teams in recent years, is that when they fall behind, they don't make up the ground, or if they do, they get so far, then fall away again. So what Rangers really had to do this season was get their noses in front to see if they could defend from the front. So they're not going to do that now. That's why the Rangers need to get the new signings in the door pronto.
Talking of McInnes, there was a pretty bold claim made. Tell us about that, who's Dell being compared to these days?
Jim Gillespie, he was asked about the sort of process of how the club had went about identifying Derek McInnes. Obviously last year when Danny Rowe was being appointed, the club sort of had some brief flirtations with Stephen Gerrard again, Kevin Muscat before going with Danny Rowe, and then obviously with Danny Rowe going, those were the kind of names that were getting bandied about again. But the club kind of made their mind up pretty early on that they wanted Derek McInnes and basically headhunted him from Hearts. Now, Jim Gillespie's trying to explain the decision making that. He made this comparison that there's 2 types of manager out there. There's a Guardiola type and there's a Klopp type, and he said that Derek's a Klopp type. I think what he was trying to say is that there's coaches who want to play the pretty football that they pass out from the pack and they play these pretty shapes. Or there's a Jurgen Klopp with this, his famous heavy metal sort of gegenpressing football where they just go straight for the jugular. And I think that's what he was trying to suggest, that basically that Derek McInnes is a guy who it's just get the ball in the box and get guys chasing after crosses. I think that's what he was trying to go for. I don't know if they will leap on the Jurgen Klopp comparison. Rangers fans would be pretty happy if it turned out to be half as successful as Jurgen Klopp.
I think they'd take a wee European win every now and again. I mean the whole thing.
I kind of got what he was going with it. I'm not sure it would have been the way I would have put it across, but yeah, I got what you were saying.
Well, the Castore deal was another thing that got brought up at the meeting. Head honcho's put in the spot. What's the latest in that one? Yeah,
listen, there's been a lot of grumbling about Castore. Obviously, Rangers wear it's Umbro branded kits, but it's through a licensing deal with Castore. And there's been, some of the kit designs haven't went down particularly well with fans. The standard of the training wear, a lot of grumbles. Just either the designs or the quality of the actual items that are for sale. And obviously the fan advisory board have been quizzing this. The actual board of directors today were quizzed on it at the shareholder meeting, and the frustration is that the previous board, given where they were financially, up against it financially, having to sort of fund the club themselves, the previous board agreed to this 8-year deal that sort of locked them in. They're halfway through it. There's another 4 years on it to run, but I think there's frustration from Rangers' side of things about the sort of products on offer and how it's been handled, the quality of, as I say, everything that's been produced. They're trying their best to try and improve things and improve the offering for fans, but it's quite stark from Parag Marat today. He basically admitted that had the current regime been in charge when this deal was put on the table, they wouldn't have signed it. So I think that tells you everything they need to know about the relationship with Castore. I don't think they're particularly happy with it. They need Castore to up their game. But as you say, I think Fraser Thornton, he was hosting today's event, he's one of the executive directors. He made clear that they are working to see improvements over the 18 months. But listen, that deal's up in 2030. I'm not so sure we should be expecting it to be renewed. I think Rangers will be going to the market looking to get a bigger name, back to your Adidas, your Nikes. I think that'll be what they see. Given the size of the fan base and the money that can be made with all replica.
When Castore made that jump as well into football, I don't think they had Newcastle. They had
Rangers were the first one.
Rangers
were the first club for them, and it was a big deal for them, and it was an important. It had benefits to Rangers at that time, but I think you've seen as Rangers have sort of recovered off the pitch, and obviously with the new ownership, they're looking for something else from their sponsorship partners. So I wouldn't expect to see that one get renewed once it expires in 2030.
I think they have a long line of suitors for that one. I think folk know the power of the Rangers brand. So looking at that, around football from Old Trafford and up, we're talking about expansion of stadiums. So Ibrox could be one, and I think we know that they could probably fill that, no problem.
Yeah, there's a wait.
What's the latest chat regarding that meeting?
Yeah, there's obviously a waiting list. Ibrox, in terms of season ticket holders, despite the sort of lack of success, that is the one thing that you can give the fans credit for. Certainly, that they turn up week in, week out, and are willing to put up their own hard-earned cash to buy season tickets. So the club are aware of this. I think also from a financial point of view, when you look at Celtic with Parkhead having 60,000 seats, they've got an advantage, a cash generating advantage over Rangers every single time they play at home. So Ibrox current capacity is around 52,000. They're looking to increase that. There's a number of options being looked at, but I think the one that's been most talked about and has been probably the easiest one to do, it's been spoken about for a number of years, is sinking the pitch down. And that would allow them to add in sort of 5,000-6,000 more seats around the perimeter of the pitch. Loads of issues to take into consideration. The water table, famously with the Clyde being not far away from Ibrox, is one of the things that has to come into that. But it's going through feasibility studies. It's with architects right now. There's been a survey carried out with fans as well to see what they want to see from it. But the club are at pains to state today that this, whatever happens, it can't be done at the expense of affecting the atmosphere. Ibrox still has to have that intimidating, noise, ability to generate, that raw power that it does. Whatever they do, it can't, come and, affect that in any way. So that is part of the whatever contingencies are being drawn up. They will have to make sure that the power of Ibrox is retained within it.
Keep it as a fortress for the Rangers support and obviously the players as well. Would be quite something to see some major work on an iconic stadium like Ibrox.
It does need some TLC. I mean, it's obviously previous regimes with everything the club went through over the last decade and a bit. There's no doubt there's parts of Ibrox that have been neglected. I think slowly but surely they're starting to tick bits off, but the big thing that fans want to see is a bigger expanded Ibrox, get more fans in, get the noise up, produce more money frankly as well. We all know that in terms of Scottish football, because of the TV deal, it doesn't produce what you get down south, so match day revenue is a huge part of what clubs can generate themselves, and if Rangers can get another 5,000-6,000 fans in, then that could go a long way to signing a few extra players every summer.
Yeah, of course, and this is something that's been recognised by a lot of the top clubs in the UK. So whether it's 52,000, 60,000 or 100,000, there's fans that are going to be talking and wanting to know what's happening with the SFA, refereeing, and our favourite thing, VAR. What was the chat regarding those three?
Yeah, obviously, I think, especially after yesterday's game, the controversial penalty that Hibs got, Rangers fans seemed perplexed by it. I must admit myself, I thought it was the soft of the soft. Both players, Vanja Dragicevic, who obviously gets penalised for a sort of tangle with Jason Kerr. He's facing the wrong way. That's what goes against him. But in terms of the contact, it's minimal. Both players are at it. If anything, Jason Kerr's got his hand in Dragicevic's face. For me, it was the softest of soft. So that was, I think, again, one of the sort of driving factors of that topic of conversation at the meeting today. Parag Marat stood up and admitted that he was stunned at it. Feels fans have got every right to be aggrieved. I think one fan stood up and said that the club had been cheated yesterday and been cheated for a long time over a number of results. Listen, I think Rangers fans feel that they've been on the wrong end of a number of decisions, and VAR has not, which was supposed to be there to help clear things up, has not. It's only added to the situation.
VAR light, as we call it,
but so
on our shows.
So Jim Gillespie sort of stood up and made the point, listen, these things are being addressed. I think fans would like to see the club be more vocal, but listen, that's a club that basically was howling at the moon for a number of years. Every time that they would have something go against them, they would release a statement, and all it did was entrench opinions. The SFA would stick to their guns, Rangers would stick to their guns, and they would never get to a point where they could meet in the middle and look to sort of improve things. I think the club, under the current ownership, the new leadership, are trying to take a different tact. Yes, if they think they're aggrieved by something, they'll provide constructive criticism in public, but they'll also do a lot of their talking behind the scenes, and that's what Jim Gillespie was making clear today, is that you can't just continually shout into the void and hope that will win friends and influence people. That's not going to happen. So they'll do a lot of their talking behind the scenes. Again, that frustrates fans because they want to have that soundtrack. They want to see that statement lashing out because they feel the same frustration, they feel the anger about it. But the club are trying to do it in a sort of more grown-up, professional way. Listen, we'll have to wait and see if it changes anything. I think across the board, Scottish football needs to have a sort of grown-up discussion, take a bit of the noise out of it about VAR, because it's not working as far as I'm concerned. I think there's far too much interference when it's not needed. I think it doesn't clear up the incidents it should do. So the only way for me is to invest in better equipment. You know, we're talking about incidents last year, like, you know, the big contentious one, the Celtic handball one against Motherwell at Fir Park.
Course, yeah.
You know, you're looking at in the grainiest of grainy, you know, camera footage from a camera that's 20, 30 yards away. The minimum spec for the SPFL was 6 cameras, whereas most games down in England, you're talking 20, 30 cameras. Obviously, you're never going to get to Premier League levels because of the huge gulf in finances.
Yeah.
But I do think if the clubs can find a way to spend a little bit more money on VAR, they can get themselves in a position where they've got a better coverage and they get a better, you know, view of these controversial incidents, and we can see a little less controversy, hopefully.
You've got Kavanagh again jumped into the lion's den kind of thing with Rangers, and took the step they took to acquire the club. And it's looking back at that first year, how did you think he handled that meeting? How do you think that the new head honchos did dealing with another tumultuous year?
Listen, as I said, they are well aware that things have not gone as smooth as they would have wanted. You know, they made mistakes. They thought they'd rectified them with obviously Danny Rowe coming in to replace Russell Martin. You know, with 5 games to go to the end of the season last year, it looked like they'd repaired the damage. Obviously, the club then collapses. The team collapses down the final straight, and it ends up costing them. And I think that it proved why Danny Rowe wasn't the right man for the job. They've now looked to bring in somebody that is a leader rather than a coach. And okay, it's not been a great start, but until Derek McInnes can get his full squad in place, until he can get players up to full fitness, and until we can get them all bedded in and gelled as a team, it is harsh to judge them. But there's no doubt that the patience that they were shown last year, and by the way, there was not much patience on show last year. There's even less of it this time. So the team has to find a way. Derek McInnes has to find a way of getting this team winning games consistently. Otherwise, we've seen what happens. This is just a rinse and repeat cycle that Rangers fans have been through time and time again.
Yeah, I think with how many changes have been made yet again at Rangers, results will have to come. So for Rangers fans watching this, what are the main 3 takeaways that comes away from the shareholders meeting?
For me, I think it was, as I said at the start, it's the talk is cheap line. I think, you know, Andrew Kavanagh held his hand up to that. He knows he can say he's sorry, he can apologise for the mistakes, he can say he's learned, he can say things are going to improve and that they will improve, but until fans see it on the pitch, they probably won't believe that. They've heard these things far too many times. I mean, I think I was trying to count back, today was maybe my 13th AGM that I've done since I started covering Rangers. And I've heard these kind of platitudes, I've heard these kind of promises time and time again, but until the club start delivering on the pitch and delivering consistently, fans are just, I think they're fed up with that. So Andrew Kavanagh's right to assess that, to admit that, you know, talk is cheap, what now is needed is action. But again, we've heard that before. And just in terms of the refereeing thing, I think it is important that the fans, as much as they're angry right now, as much as they are upset with certainly the decision that went against them yesterday, just because the club maybe aren't lashing out in the way that they are, don't for a second think that they're not making representations in this front. They're speaking to the SFA every week. I think Jim Gillespie was was asking questions of Willie Collum last night. I think he was certainly, he said he'd asked questions about what on earth had happened with that decision yesterday. So these things will go on behind the scenes. I think, as I say, days of Rangers being Statement FC are over. I think they're going to try and do things in a quieter, more understated way, and hope that gets better result than the previous, methods that didn't really do much at all. They just antagonise people, rub people up the wrong way, and at no point did it get to the point where Rangers and the SFA could be on the same page in terms of how they thought refereeing issues should be handled. And finally, the Castore issue again. I think Rangers fans, that's one of the big things that frustrated Rangers fans over the last few years, but it looks like things are being addressed. Interesting to hear from Parag Marathi that say that this is not a deal that they would have signed had the American regime been in place 4 years ago when this deal gets signed. So a lot of Rangers fans are looking at other clubs, looking at Celtic with an Adidas deal. Rangers themselves had an Adidas deal, had a Nike deal in previous years, and that's the kind of level of merchandise that they want to get back to. So I would think that unless Castore drastically up their game over the next couple of years, I think Rangers will be going out to market in 2030 and looking to sort of get themselves a new partner on that front.
I'm sure. Be interesting to see how the next month goes, let alone 12 months at Ibrox. But that's us for another week. Thanks again to our sponsors, which are NordVPN. You'll be able to listen to this episode and many others on YouTube, Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So please like and review, as that helps us spread the podcast far and wide. You can keep up to date with all the latest news coming out of Ibrox at dailyrecord.co.uk or in the paper. Thanks, Andy, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.